Hello everyone, welcome to a GHB Tempest Route tier list update. This time we'll be looking at Kronya. As far as stream will go, I'm actually not going to be streaming on Saturday. There's also not going to be any refined theory crafting this month, because instead I'm going to be playing through the entirety of Three Houses. I'm going to go Blue Lion for like 2 people, who cares? And I'm probably just going to stream it in 1 week. I have to go back to school in a few weeks, so this is like one of the few times I actually can work on this and actually play through the whole thing. So if you're curious of that, well, follow me on Twitch and just join on Discord so I can actually tag, so you can actually see the tag when I go up. And moving on to actually the new unit. So this is our first 162 BST infantry unit. This looks good on paper until you realize that they basically wasted 10, 11, 12, perhaps even more points. Well, mostly 6 points, because the speed could honestly go down by 8 points and it would still not matter, because the weapon just gives so much speed anyway. Still, it's pretty good. 162 BST mean you don't really need colorless dual infantry. You still hit 165 BST because of the merge update. Other than that, though, the way our points are separated, I'm gonna be honest and say that she actually has quite a bit of competition as far as stats goes. Now, Afame, or Atame, or Hafame, I don't know how to pronounce this fucking weapon, okay? Gives 3 points in res. That kind of is irrelevant. That said, it's kind of good to set up for Brazen attack depth. That way you have equal defense and res, and it's very easy to hit Brazen, considering how much HP she has. As for the effect of the weapon, it basically grants you 5 attack and 5 speed, as well as a Vantage effect, which does not require any HP threshold for you, as long as the enemy has lost some kind of HP. This is not bad. In fact, this is actually pretty good, and if it wasn't for this weapon, I would not even consider her workable to begin with, just because her competition, as far as stat goes, her competition absolutely wiped the floor with her. Just a lot less of wasted points here and there, and just overall, just better. And if you have to stray away from this weapon, I'm gonna be honest with you and say that said competition absolutely crushes her in terms of utility. So, what else? Well, she comes with Distant Guard. I'm glad to see IS finally realizing that this skill is not that great. It took them long enough, considering, well, let's be honest, very few people has been following Lucina, Legendary Lucina, I believe, and someone else for that skill. Distant Guard is just not really worth anything. In general, it can be good in some cases to deal with mages, but even then in AR, mages tends to rhyme with Ophelia, and Ophelia does not care about in-combat boost. She cares about your straight-up res. So if you're reliant on skills such as these, she tends to just do so much damage on the AoE hit that it doesn't even matter anymore. As long as she does 1 damage, which is very easy when you have a base of 41 attack with attack plus, you tend to die. That's just how it is. Aspiration is probably something you're going to get rid of also. It's just not that relevant. And Luna is, well, it's Luna. It's basically the safest one to go for, but I don't understand why you would give a dagger Luna, especially when said dagger reduces defense to begin with. Especially if you're going to use her with Savage Blow to make her weapon more consistent. Because in which case, well, your weapon is more consistent, you lose defense, and therefore Luna does less damage. Why bother, you know? Moving on, the first merges gives her an extra point in speed, attack, and HP. This is both good and bad, honestly. If it gave attack and defense, or attack and res, or literally anything that wasn't speed it would probably do better, which is kind of ironic considering, you know, a lot of character in general tends to not get points where it matters. And, well, she's just another one of these, but not because she's lacking in the area where she gets the point, but rather because she is overkill in the area where she gets the point. So, yeah, overall, just too speedy. Just keep in mind, a buff and her weapon gives 11 speed already. Okay, so even on merge you're at 50 speed. This is without summoner support, this is without dragon flowers, this is just baseline, no A skill, no seal slot, no nothing. You're already at 50 speed, which is already overkill. So the fact that you get 5 speed extra when you plus 10 her is kind of atrocious, but for different reasons. It's quite unfortunate. Because at the end of the day you end up with 55 speed, with summoner support as 57, and with dragon flowers that's 58. In what world do you need this much speed? None. So yeah, speaking of comparisons, this is what I meant. Even like gold is quite comparable. In fact, having overall better bulk as far as arena goes. In AR, yes, the extra bit of res that Kronya has will be a bit superior. And yes, of course, her weapon has more might to begin with because the gold does not have a pref. And the set pref for Kronya actually makes up for the attack difference. But it's still worth mentioning that one doesn't cause Grail, and the other one does. Legault is a 3 to 4 star unit, though unfortunately he is also a tactic fodder. Now the other one is Soph, and Soph is the one that's really hard to make any point for Kronya. Also, before I continue, I know a few people, well, one person, and the last time I did comparison like this, was like, why is one with 10 flower and the other one with 5? So, for the sake of, you know, pointing out obvious things, Kronya can only get up to 5 flowers because she's a Gen 3 unit. Gen 2 units, however, they can get up to 10 flowers if they're infantry units. That's why. So I'm basically putting both of them at their max. Well, all 3 of them rather. And so this is basically their stat at the maximum without a weapon included. As you know, Soph also has a pref. So even if Kronya's dagger is active, you end up with the same amount of attack. Except Soph doesn't require any setup. And his weapon actually serves as a buffing tool for your team as well. And the second that you want to change for any kind of weapon, Soph is just better than Kronya. Like, say you want to switch to Lilina's dagger, for example, which is a really good weapon. Well, if you go with Soph, that weapon is just overall better because you have an extra 5 attack at base over Kronya. Now, Kronya does beat him in speed, and it doesn't matter. Because like I said, Kronya has way too much speed. In most encounter, that speed is just going to do absolutely nothing. Sure, it's going to be nice for like that 1 out of 100 encounters, but other than that, the fact that Soph can hit 48 speed, and if you switch his weapon to a different weapon, you can still refine it for speed, pushing his speed to 50, and that's without an A skill or a seal skill, is already more than enough. And because of his bulk being relatively the same, against Dragon it's the same bulk, against melee unit it's slightly better, and it's only against mages that he actually has worse bulk, outside of HP of course. And that's another thing. I said to some extent that the HP that Kronya gets is a waste. Not always. If you actually run something like colorless dual infantry for whatever reason, just for scoring that slight bit better, and run sudden panic, maybe changing the weapon to something else for that extra refine HP, you're looking at 58 HP. Sudden Panic is actually not that bad at that point. And at that point, you can also be using this to your advantage for other units on the team, such as Guntra, Rid, and so on. So as a result, she becomes a pretty good debuff spreader, which is not bad. Not bad at all. It's just, that's the main thing her HP can provide. Anything else tends to just be a bit lackluster, is the problem. Soph is obviously, as far as his weapon is concerned, power crept by Veronica, but despite it all, he has so many toy that he can work with. Honestly, I'm debating on plus 10-1 now because he actually is just better than Kronya. Yes, Kronya scores better, but that's the last of my worry. I don't play this game because a unit is slightly better than the other in scoring. Not anymore. I used to, but that type of thinking is just draining and depressing. So, yeah. Overall, I genuinely say if you do not want to use Kronya's dagger, rather build a Soph. Unless, like I said, your goal is to go for sudden panic shenanigans, in which case it's pretty good. But otherwise, don't bother. It's just not a good idea. Moving on to builds, as obvious as this one was coming, Ruptured Sky yet again. Pulse Smoke is a good alternative to Attack Smoke if you feel like your bulk is good enough. Now, her bulk is very workable, it's a bit iffy to work with at first, so do keep that in mind. So overall, you're looking at, well, let's put it this way. The second you're in Brazen, you have 39 def and 39 res. That's not bad. And your attack is pushed up to 68. Do understand you need to get to the point of Brazen, though. Until you're in Brazen range, you are a weakling. And another problem with this is the fact that our attack is so low. You can't really combo anything like Eliwood unless you do Summoner Support and Dragonflower up to the attack point up. At 53, you stand a chance to actually maybe tie a few units of your team, but even then it's really iffy, so it's really hard to use, because that type of stat line, if it could use Eliwood's bonus doubler, would be insane. You'd be looking at 45 defense and 45 res right now, and with Summoner Support that's 48 in both. And then if you're using attack smoke, that's essentially, well, 55-55. That's really tanky. The problem is that her attack is so low that you'd have to use her with specific other unit that don't have exactly a whole lot of attack. And or use her in a Water's Blessing team so you can actually, you know, combo her into Erica, which is not Wind, which is kind of unfortunate. The other option would be Lyn, and Lyn is Wind, so that's workable with Eliwood. Thankfully, Lyn's attack is atrocious, so typically you're going to be able to just have enough attack for her with the attack buff, Summoner Support, and everything else to actually be the one buffed by Eliwood. Do keep in mind that's the type of combo that requires you to really commit to having certain units, however, so it's not exactly an easy combo to pull off. Still, it's a worthy mention. Ruptured Sky is a no-brainer. It's just essentially just so you keep proccing. And obviously, Pulse Smoke is there so you can actually shut down those instant specials. That way you can just say, come in, attack Ophelia, potentially even one-shot her, and then you can just set up for Vantage because suddenly they don't have any special to threaten you with, which is really good. Special Spiral is there so Ruptured Sky procs every single time. That's pretty obvious. And yeah. Overall, the hardest part is just the setup at first with this first set, because after that you should be pretty easy. I will say one thing, and I've said this before with the review of the banner itself. Pain Plus. Bring a healer with Pain Plus and you're going to be a whole lot better. Savage Blow is an option. Relying on it is bad overall though, because Savage Blow do not proc on enemy phase whatsoever. Meaning you have to be on the offensive when you go for it. Otherwise you get nothing. If you're baiting something, it doesn't work. So overall it's just very awkward, is the problem. So, yeah. A Pain Plus healer comboed into her is a lot better, since you can actually bait with Pain Plus to inflict the HP minus part. Or you have more range if it's, say, a Horse healer. And then you could say repo said Horse healer with Kronya pretty safely. I think you get the idea. It's a bit convoluted, and yes, it's kind of a problem in general. Sadly, it's kind of your best bet. The second set is an obvious one. Shuts down Blade Tome, deals with range units a bit better. Overall, you have an extra, well, 14 def and res, as long as they're ranged, which pushes your bolt to 46 defense and 53 res. It's overall not bad, however do keep in mind that if you have to deal with AoEs, you're absolutely going to die. Say Ophelia is coming in with like typical 55 attack, well more like 60, but 55 attack, which is attack plus with, you know, the weapon and nothing else. Typically it's 60 because you run life and death on top of it. But with 55, you're looking at 24 damage with the AoE alone, and 16 with the damage after. And that's against a plus 10. Well, actually no, 24 with the AoE, and potentially 0 with the AoE after. Well, with the damage after the AoE rather. Still, that's me like lowballing it. Typically, Ophelia's has 60 attack. Sometimes they're buffed, because obviously I was not considering her buffed. And other times Duma is also pushing that attack higher. It's just really overall very dangerous to deal with. And if there's a rally trap, that's unfortunate. You'd be looking at typically 66 attack, and that's not even merged. 70 attack if it's merged. And with 66 attack, you're looking at 40 damage from the AoE alone. So, yeah. Granted, Distant Death 4 does shut down those buffs, but you still take damage after. That's 47 damage overall. And 47 damage is a bit too close, especially if any kind of buff are added to it. So, overall, be careful with this type of set, it's not almighty. But yeah, those are the two sets I really wanted to showcase, so next up is the placement on the tier list. She is currently S-. I'm honestly all debating between A+ and S-, because if you do not use her dagger, like I said, Soph is just better in every way. Her stat line is so much more flexible, it's just kind of what it is. Still, I can't go behind the fact that, you know, she's still a decent unit, and as far as daggers go, you could definitely go worse than what we got. Still, the best part I could put it is between S- and A+. She is very much a low S- tier. Like, to compare it with Fiora, I consider Fiora to be very mid S- tier, if not higher, if not high S- tier. So, yeah, Kronya is kind of a slightly worse version, but it's still a decent unit overall. So yeah. I suppose that about covers it up. Not much else to say about this, so hey, I'm gonna see you all later. I'm so sorry for being so late on the subject, but yeah, here you go. Have a nice one, everyone, and see you all later.